The morning light filtering through the Sh7's atmosphere cast everything in shades of amber and gold. Nora Blackwood pressed her palm against the observation dome's cool surface, watching the alien sunrise paint the research station's garden in impossible colors. 3 years studying xenobotany on this remote moon, and she still felt her breath catch at moments like this. Another sleepless night. Marcus Chen's voice broke through her reverie. Her research partner emerged from the lab, carrying 2 steaming cups of synthetic coffee. The Lumina clusters were active again, Nora said, accepting the cup gratefully. I swear they're trying to tell me something. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Plants don't communicate, Nora. They're just responding to the moon's electromagnetic field. But Nora wasn't listening. Her attention had been captured by the garden beyond the dome, where dozens of crystalline plant forms pulsed with soft blue light in perfect synchronization. The Lumina clusters her discovery. Her obsession for the past 6 months were doing it again. She grabbed her tablet and rushed to the garden's sealed entrance. The airlock cycled through its safety protocols while she pulled on her biosuit, fingers trembling with excitement. Marcus followed, shaking his head but unable to hide his own curiosity. The garden was a wonderland of adapted earth plants and native Thesian flora. Nora had spent countless hours here, but the Lumina clusters drew her like a magnet. They were, unlike anything in the xenobotanical databases, translucent, coral-like structures that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Look at the pattern, she whispered, holding up her tablet to record. The bioluminescent display was more complex than ever before, waves of blue and silver light cascading through the cluster in intricate sequences. Marcus frowned at his scanner readings. Nora, these energy signatures, they're not random. There's a mathematical progression here. Before she could respond, the patterns shifted. The lights moved faster, more urgently, and suddenly Nora felt something impossible, emotion. Not her own, but flowing from the plants themselves. Fear, warning, danger approaching. Someone's coming, she breathed, not understanding how she knew. The station's alarm began to blare. Through the garden's transparent walls, Nora saw armed figures in corporate security uniforms marching toward the research facility. Helix Corporation, the company funding their research, had sent an enforcement team. We need to get to the emergency protocols, Marcus said, grabbing her arm. But Nora pulled away, her eyes fixed on the Lumina clusters. Their light was now pulsing in rapid, desperate patterns. They're trying to warn us, she said. Marcus, what if they're not just plants? What if they're the garden's entry hatch? Exploded inward. Security officers in black armor poured through, weapons drawn. Their leader, a woman with cold eyes and corporate insignia, surveyed the garden with calculating interest. Dr. Blackwood, the woman said, her voice carrying the artificial politeness of corporate authority. I'm Agent Rivera. Your research has been classified as a security risk. You'll be coming with us. Security risk? Nora stepped protectively in front of the Lumina clusters. These plants could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness itself. You can't just, we can, and we will. Rivera nodded to her team. Burn it all. Leave no samples. The security officers raised their weapons, flame units designed to sterilize biological hazards. Nora's heart shattered as she realized they meant to destroy everything, her life's work, the beautiful garden she'd cultivated, and the possibly sentient beings she'd grown to love. No. She threw herself between the soldiers and the clusters. That's when the garden exploded into light. Every plant, every flower, every living thing in the space erupted in brilliant bioluminescence. The Lumina clusters blazed like stars, their patterns now clearly recognizable as language complex, beautiful and utterly alien. The light was so intense that the security officers stumbled backward, visors automatically darkening. In that moment of chaos, something impossible happened. The garden's walls began to crack, not from structural failure but from the sheer force of life itself. Vines erupted through the floor, flowers bloomed in seconds, and the air filled with pollen that sparkled like stardust. Through the blazing light, Nora saw him, tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shift between deep blue and silver. He moved through the chaotic garden like he belonged there. His eyes were the color of deep ocean water, and when they met hers, She felt a jolt of recognition that made no sense. "Come with me if you want to live," he said, his voice carrying an accent she couldn't place. "The Lumina have chosen you. Nora Blackwood. They will not let you die." Without hesitation, she took his outstretched hand. His skin was warm, almost electric, and the moment their fingers touched, the garden's light pulsed in response. "Who are you?" she gasped as he led her through the botanical chaos. "My name is Zeph," he replied, pulling her toward a section of wall that was dissolving under the touch of rapidly growing vines. "And I've been waiting for someone like you my entire life." Behind them, Agent Rivera was shouting orders, but the security team couldn't fight their way through the living barrier the garden had become. Plants wrapped around their weapons, pollen clouds obscured their vision, and the floor itself seemed to be helping their quarry escape. As they reached the dissolving wall, Zeph turned to face her. "I know this is impossible to believe, but the Lumina are my people's sacred partners. They've been calling to me for months, showing me visions of a human woman who could hear their songs. Your people." Nora's mind reeled as they stepped through the wall into a hidden tunnel beyond. "The Kelhuri," Zeph said softly. "We've been watching your species for generations, waiting for the right moment to make contact. The Lumina chose you as our bridge between worlds." The tunnel led them deep into the Sci-Fi's underground cavern system. As they ran, Nora's tablet continued recording the Lumina's light patterns, now clearly showing mathematical sequences that could only be language. "The corporate security team," she panted. "They'll destroy everything." Zeph's expression hardened. "Not everything. The Lumina are ancient and patient. They've survived worse than Helix Corporation." He squeezed her hand gently. "Besides, they have what they came for." "What do you mean?" He stopped in a vast underground chamber where bioluminescent formations created a cathedral of living light. When he turned to face her, his eyes held depths that spoke of centuries of knowledge and sorrow. "You, Nora, the Lumina have been preparing you for months, teaching you to hear their songs, to understand their language. You're not just a botanist anymore." His voice was gentle but certain. "You're the first human to truly commune with another species' consciousness." As if in response to his words, the cavern around them began to glow. Formations that looked like larger versions of the Lumina clusters pulsed with welcoming light, and Nora felt their emotions wash over her: joy, hope, and something that felt surprisingly like love. "This is impossible," she whispered, but even as she said it, she knew it was true. The months of studying the Lumina, the sleepless nights spent in the garden, the growing sense that she was being changed by something beyond her understanding. It all made sense now. Zeph stepped closer, his alien features beautiful in the soft light. "Not impossible, inevitable. The Lumina have been waiting for someone who could love them as they are, not as a resource to be exploited." "And you?" she asked, surprised by her own boldness. "Have you been waiting too?" His smile was answer enough. "My entire life, Nora Blackwood. The Lumina showed me your face in their light songs long before I ever saw you. I've been dreaming of you for years." As he spoke, the cavern's glow intensified, and Nora realized that their connection was deeper than just circumstance. The Lumina hadn't just chosen her, they had chosen them both, bringing together two people from different worlds who shared the same reverence for life, the same capacity for wonder, the same need to protect the beautiful and fragile connections between all living things. Above them, she knew Helix Corporation's security team was probably destroying her research station, erasing years of work. But here, in this cathedral of living light, surrounded by the singing consciousness of an ancient species and looking into the eyes of someone who understood her better than anyone ever had, Nora felt like she was finally home. The real adventure was just beginning. The crystal caverns stretched endlessly through the Sci-Fi's heart, their walls pulsing with the same gentle bioluminescence that had first drawn Nora to the Lumina. Zeph led her deeper into the maze of tunnels, his movements fluid and confident. In the alien landscape, every step took them further from the surface, from the burning research station, from everything Nora had known as reality. "How long have you been living down here?" she asked, her voice echoing softly off the crystalline walls. Zeph's pace slowed. 3 years. Since my exile." The word hung between them like a physical weight. Nora studied his profile in the shifting light, the elegant bone structure, the way his skin seemed to shimmer with its own inner radiance, the careful control in every movement that spoke of someone carrying deep pain. Exile from where? Kethera Prime, my home world. His voice carried centuries of loss. I was a healer there, trained in the ancient arts of life binding. My people valued my abilities highly, too highly. Perhaps they emerged into a vast chamber, where natural formations had been shaped into something resembling a living space. Curved walls flowed seamlessly into furniture that seemed grown rather than built. Bioluminescent vines provided gentle illumination, and the air hummed with the subtle energy Nora was beginning to associate with Kelhari presence. "This is beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers along a wall that pulsed warmly under her touch. "The lumina helped me shape it," Zeth explained, his manner softening as he watched her explore. "They understand loneliness better than most. When I first arrived, broken and bleeding from my escape, they sang to me until I healed." Nora turned to face him fully. "What happened? Why were you exiled?" Zeth moved to what appeared to be a preparation area, his hands working with practiced precision as he gathered supplies. "There was a war. The hegemony and militant faction of Kelhari demanded that all healers serve the military effort. They wanted us to bond with soldiers, to make them stronger, faster, more resilient in battle. Life binding," Nora repeated. "What does that mean?" Instead of answering immediately, Zeth approached her with a bowl of luminescent liquid and soft cloths. "You were injured during our escape. The luminous protective display was beautiful, but their energy discharge can be harmful to human cellular structure. May I?" Nora looked down at her arms, surprised to see angry red marks where the intense bioluminescent energy had touched her skin. She hadn't even felt the pain in her adrenaline-fueled flight. "Yes, please." Zeth's touch was impossibly gentle as he began cleaning the energy burns. The liquid in the bowl felt cool against her skin, and wherever he touched, a tingling warmth followed. But it was more than just the medicinal treatment. Nora felt something flowing between them, a connection that made her hyper-aware of his presence. "Life binding is the sharing of vital energy between the beings," he explained softly, his fingers working with careful precision. "For my people, it's the most intimate form of healing. The healer opens their life force to another, allowing them to share strength, accelerate healing, even temporarily share consciousness." The tingling in Nora's arms intensified, spreading up toward her shoulders. She watched in fascination as the angry red marks began to fade, her skin returning to its normal color. "That's incredible," she whispered. "But why would that make you an exile?" Zeth's hands stilled for a moment. "Because the hegemony wanted us to create permanent bonds with their soldiers. Life binding can be temporary, a sharing of energy for healing or strength. But permanent bonds," his voice grew heavy, "they change both participants forever. The bond had become something new, stronger than either could be alone, but no longer entirely themselves." Nora felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cave's temperature. "They wanted you to sacrifice your identity to make better soldiers. They wanted us to sacrifice our souls." Zeth resumed his gentle ministrations, his touch now moving to the smaller burns on her neck and face. "I refused. Many of us did. The healing arts are meant to preserve life, not remake it for war. So you ran. We tried to resist peacefully first." His ocean-deep eyes met hers, and she saw depths of pain that made her heart ache. "They made an example of the resistors, public executions, their life forces drained away by corrupted versions of our own healing techniques." Nora's hand moved instinctively to cover his, stopping his work. "I'm sorry. I can't imagine watching your people pervert something so beautiful." The moment their skin made full contact, the world exploded into sensation. Suddenly Nora could feel everything Zeth was feeling. His careful control, his deep loneliness, his growing fascination with her alien human mind. But more than that, she could feel his life force itself, warm and vast and surprisingly gentle for someone who had endured so much loss. Zeth gasped, his eyes widening. "Nora, you shouldn't be able to. I can feel you," she whispered, wonder and fear warring in her voice. "Your energy, your emotions. Is this normal?" "No." His voice was barely audible. Humans aren't supposed to be capable of life binding. Your species lacks the neural pathways, the genetic markers. But even as he spoke, Nora could feel the connection deepening. It was as if something in her that had always been dormant was finally awakening. The months of exposure to the Lumina, the growing sensitivity to their emotional states, it had been preparing her for this moment. The Lumina, she breathed, they've been changing me. Zeth nodded slowly, his hand still covered by hers, preparing. You, they must have known. He trailed off, lost in thought. Known what? That I would need you. The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it did her. I've been alone for 3 years. Nora, cut off from my people, from the connections that give my life meaning. The Lumina have been keeping me alive, but they're not Kelhari. They can't share the deeper bonds my species needs to truly thrive. The connection between them pulsed stronger, and suddenly Nora could see flashes of his memories, the beauty of Kethra Prime with its floating crystal cities, the joy of healing through shared life force, the devastating loneliness of exile. But underneath it all, she felt something else, a growing warmth centered specifically on her. You feel it too, she said, not really a question. I shouldn't. Zeth's voice was thick with conflict. You're human, an entirely different species. This should be impossible, but it's not. Nora shifted closer, drawn by forces she didn't fully understand. It's happening right now. The healing liquid had done its work. Her burns were completely gone, leaving only smooth, unmarked skin. But Zeth's hands remained on her arms, his touch sending waves of shared sensation through their growing bond. There are dangers, he said, urgently. Life binding changes both participants. If we go deeper, you won't be entirely human anymore. And he struggled for words. I won't be the same Kelhari who fled his home world. We'll become something new. Is that what you're afraid of? Nora asked. Or is it that you'll finally have a connection worth staying alive for? The question hit him like a physical blow. Through their bond, she felt his carefully maintained control crack, revealing the desperate loneliness underneath. 3 years of exile, of existing without the connections that defined Kelhari life, had nearly broken him. You don't understand what you're offering, he whispered. Then show me. Before he could protest, Nora placed her other hand against his chest, over his heart. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The partial bond they'd been sharing suddenly exploded into full contact, their life forces intertwining in ways that defied every law of biology she knew. She was Nora, humans and a botanist, lover of growing things and distant stars. But she was also Zeth, Kelhari healer, carrying centuries of genetic memory and the trained ability to sense the life force in every living thing. She felt his wonder at human resilience, their ability to adapt and grow in ways his people had forgotten. He felt her fierce protectiveness, her willingness to risk everything for the sake of discovery and connection. Most importantly, they both felt the rightness of the bond, as if the pieces of a puzzle had finally found their perfect fit. When the intensity finally faded to manageable levels, they found themselves pressed close together, breathing hard. Zeth's eyes had taken on flecks of brown that matched Nora's, while her own eyes now showed traces of his ocean blue. What have we done? Zeth whispered, but his tone held wonder rather than regret. Something beautiful, Nora replied, testing the new awareness of his presence that hummed constantly in the back of her mind. Something that scares you because it means you don't have to be alone anymore. Zeth's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing the slight blue tinge that now colored her skin near her temples. The hegemony would kill us both for this. The interspecies life bond violates every law they hold sacred. Then it's a good thing we're both exiles now, Nora said, leaning into his touch. Besides, I burned my bridges when I chose the Lumina over corporate profit. There's no going back to my old life, and no going forward without consequences, Zeth added. But his voice held acceptance now rather than fear. The bond will continue to deepen. Within days, we'll be able to share thoughts, emotions, even memories more freely. Our lifespans will synchronize. You'll live as long as I do, but my connection to the Kelhari collective consciousness will be permanently altered by human thought patterns. Are you having second thoughts? The orbital station, Heaven's Rest, spun lazily against the star field. its docking bays alive with the constant flow of merchant vessels, smuggler ships, and the occasional corporate transport trying to look inconspicuous. Juno Castellan guided her modified freighter, the Wandering Star, into Docking Bay 17 with the practiced ease of someone who'd been running questionable cargo through questionable ports for the better part of a decade. Another day, another credit, she muttered. But her heart wasn't in the familiar refrain. The encrypted message she'd received 3 days ago had changed everything, turning what should have been a routine smuggling run into something far more dangerous. Package requires immediate extraction from Nesha 7. Payment negotiable. Lives depend on discretion. Contact Zephyr. Juno had recognized the code name immediately. Zephyr was Dr. Elena Vasquez, a former Helix Corporation researcher who'd gone underground 2 years ago after discovering her company's illegal experimentation on sentient alien species. Since then, she'd been feeding information to the underground network of scientists, activists, and smugglers working to expose corporate crimes against non-human life. The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk, and Juno ran through her post-flight checklist with automatic precision. Her ship was designed to look like a standard cargo hauler from the outside, but the Wandering Star had sophisticated sensors, enhanced engines, and enough firepower to discourage casual inspection. It was the perfect vessel for someone whose official job was transporting agricultural supplies, and whose unofficial job was so much more interesting. Juno Castellan. Cargo manifest states agricultural equipment for the Outer Rim colonies. Came the voice of station control through her. That's right, Juno replied smoothly. Nothing exciting. Just hydroponic systems and seed banks. It wasn't entirely a lie. Half her cargo hold did contain legitimate farming equipment. The other half held evidence files, rescued researchers, and occasionally alien refugees fleeing corporate persecution. Today, if everything went according to plan, she'd be adding 2 more names to her passenger manifest. Juno made her way through Heaven's Rest's crowded corridors, her appearance carefully calculated to blend in. Medium height, brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, clothes that suggested a working trader without much profit margin. Nothing to draw attention from either corporate security or station authorities. The Nexus Cafe sat at the intersection of 3 major corridors, perfect for spotting trouble before it spotted you. Juno ordered Synthikoff and claimed a corner booth, her enhanced tablet displaying shipping schedules, while she waited for her contact. Mind if I sit? Everywhere else is taken. Juno looked up to see a woman in the blue jumpsuit of a station technician. Average height, forgettable features, but her eyes held the sharp intelligence Juno had learned to associate with Dr. Vasquez's network. Sure, Juno said, gesturing to the empty seat. Shipping business keeping you busy, always. The woman clearly not a real technician slid into the booth, though some packages are more urgent than others. I understand you specialize in delicate deliveries. Depends on the package, Juno replied, falling into the familiar rhythm of coded conversation. And the delivery address to researchers currently hiding on Nesha 7. 1 human, 1 foreign. They have information that certain corporations would kill to suppress. The woman's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Helix moved fast after their initial escape. The research station has been sterilized, officially blamed on equipment malfunction. Juno's blood chilled. She'd known Helix Corporation was ruthless, but destroying an entire research facility to cover up whatever had happened there suggested something bigger than their usual cover-ups. What kind of information? The kind that proves interspecies communication and cooperation are not only possible, but actively being suppressed by corporate interests. The woman slid a data chip across the table. Preliminary evidence. The researchers have much more, including proof of Helix's illegal experiments and the murder of an entire research team. Juno palmed the chip with practiced skill. Extraction from Nesha 7 won't be easy. It's under corporate quarantine now, which is why we need someone with your creative approach to navigation. The woman stood to leave. The researchers are hiding in the crystal caverns beneath the surface. Transmit on frequency 77 alpha when you're in system. They'll guide you to a safe landing zone. Payment, standard rate. plus a bonus if you can get them to the Frontier Assembly's headquarters on New Geneva. They have allies there who can protect them and ensure the information reaches the right people. After the woman left, Juno sat alone with her cooling Synthikoff and the weight of decision. She'd been running the Underground Railroad for corporate refugees for 3 years now, ever since her own sister had been killed by Helix Security for refusing to falsify research data. Every successful extraction was another blow against the corporations that treated sentient life as property to be exploited. But this felt different, bigger, the kind of operation that could either change everything or get everyone involved killed. She was still weighing the risks when her personal comm chirped with an incoming message. The sender was listed as M. Torres Agricultural Supplies, but Juno recognized the encryption signature immediately. Corporate security teams mobilizing for the Sh-7. Multiple military vessels en route. Window for extraction closing rapidly. Recommend immediate departure if you're committed to the operation. Miguel Torres had been Juno's inside contact at several corporations for 2 years, feeding her information about security movements and planned operations. If he said the window was closing, she had hours, not days. Juno drained her Synthikoff and headed back to her ship at a pace that suggested urgency without panic. As she walked, she activated her comms secure channel and sent a brief message to her network contacts. Package pickup confirmed, ETA 18 hours. Prepare alternate routes in case of complications. Junith Wandering Star's engines hummed to life as Juno ran through her pre-flight sequence. Haven's Rest traffic control cleared her for departure, without question one of the advantages of maintaining a boring reputation. As soon as she cleared the station's gravity well, she engaged her ship's enhanced drive system and set course for the Sh-7. The journey gave her time to study the preliminary data on the chip. What she found made her push the engines harder than was strictly safe. The evidence was fragmentary but damning. Communication logs showing Helix Corporation had been experimenting with forced bonding between human and alien subjects. Research notes describing the discovery of a new form of sentient plant life with unprecedented communication abilities, and most disturbing of all, execution orders for anyone who might expose the project. Dr. Nora Blackwood, the human researcher, had been conducting legitimate xenobotanical studies when she'd stumbled across something that terrified Helix enough to order her death. Her alien companion, identified only as Zeth, species unknown, appeared to be some kind of healer or scientist himself. Juno found herself wondering what it would be like to meet an actual alien. In her years of smuggling, she'd rescued human researchers, activists, and corporate whistleblowers, but never someone from another species entirely. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. The Sh-7 appeared on her sensors 12 hours later, a small moon orbiting a gas giant in the outer reaches of the system. The corporate quarantine was immediately visible. 3 Helix security vessels maintaining a defensive perimeter around the moon. Time for some creative navigation, Juno muttered, engaging the Wandering Star's stealth systems. Her ship's modifications included sensor baffles and a hull coating that made her nearly invisible to standard detection arrays. It wasn't perfect. A detailed skin would still reveal her presence, but it was enough to slip past patrols that weren't looking for trouble. She guided the ship through the asteroid field surrounding the gas giant, using the larger rocks for cover as she approached the Sh-7. The moon's surface showed the scars of recent bombardment. The research station was now a smoking crater visible even from orbit. 7-7 Alpha. She transmitted on the frequency the technician had given her package pickup service. Please advise landing coordinates. The response came within minutes, not as words, but as a complex pattern of light emanating from the moon's surface. It was beautiful and alien, clearly not human in origin, and somehow Juno understood it perfectly. Coordinates, safe approach vector, and something that felt like welcome. Well, that's new, she said to herself, following the guidance toward a hidden canyon on the moon's night side. The landing was tricky, requiring her to thread the ship between crystal formations that would have destroyed anything larger than a fighter. But the Wandering Star touched down gently in a cavern that had clearly been shaped to accommodate Her vessel Data figures emerged from the depths of the cave as Juno lowered her ship's ramp. The human woman matched the description she'd been given Dr. Nora Blackwood, xenobotanist. But her companion took Juno's breath away. Zeph was tall and elegant, with skin that shifted between blue and silver in the cavern's bioluminescent light. His eyes were the deep blue-green of ocean depths, and when they met hers, Juno felt an unexpected jolt of attraction that had nothing to do with his alien nature. The abandoned research facility on asteroid Kepler-440b had been drifting in the void. For nearly a decade, its corridors dark and its laboratories silent. It was the perfect place for a clandestine meeting, far enough from corporate shipping lanes to avoid detection, but close enough to the Frontier Assembly's jurisdiction to offer some protection if things went wrong. Kira Salas felt the familiar tingle of prescient awareness as her sleek courier ship, the Mindbridge, approached the derelict station, half human, half Calhari. She existed between worlds in ways that went far deeper than mere genetics. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the emotional resonances that lingered in places like this. The excitement of discovery, the desperation of evacuation, and underneath it all, the cold touch of corporate betrayal. 3 life signs aboard the station. She reported to the small figure watching from the navigation station. To human, 1 Calhari. Strong emotional turbulence from all 3. Her companion, elderly human woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, nodded grimly. Dr. Elena Vasquez said the evidence they're carrying could change everything. But she also warned that the situation has become complicated. Dr. Iris Thorne had been fighting corporate exploitation of alien life for longer than Kira had been alive. As the Frontier Assembly's chief xenobiological ethicist, she had the authority to offer sanctuary to refugees and the resources to protect them from corporate retaliation. She was also one of the few humans who knew the full extent of Kira's abilities. Complicated how? Kira asked, though her empathic senses were already giving her uncomfortable hints. The emotional signatures from the station were unlike anything she'd encountered before, 3 distinct patterns that somehow overlapped and intertwined in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The reports are contradictory, Dr. Thorne admitted. A human xenobotanist who claims to have discovered sentient plant life, a Calhari exile who somehow formed an interspecies life bond, and a smuggler who's been exposed to energies that may have altered her neural pathways. Kira's breath caught. An interspecies life bond, that's impossible. The genetic incompatibilities alone would prevent such a connection under normal circumstances, Dr. Thorne finished. But these aren't normal circumstances. The preliminary data suggests the involvement of a third party and alien intelligence that may have been facilitating the bond. The Mindbridge docked with the research station with barely a whisper, its advanced systems interfacing seamlessly with the derelict facility's emergency protocols. Kira led the way through the airlocks. Her empathic senses extended to their fullest range as she navigated the dark corridors. She found them in what had once been the station's main laboratory. 3 figures huddled around a portable power source, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of tablet displays and emergency lighting. As soon as Kira entered the room, she felt the full force of their connection hit her like a physical blow. The human woman Dr. Nora Blackwood was bonded to the Calhari male in ways that defied every law of xenobiology Kira knew. But more disturbing was the third presence, the smuggler woman, whose neural patterns showed clear signs of partial integration into the alien bond structure. Zeth, Kira's voice came out as barely a whisper. The Calhari male turned, and Kira felt her heart shatter as she recognized the face she'd been dreaming about for 3 years. Zeth Maravan, her former bondmate, the healer she'd loved and lost when he fled Kethera Prime rather than submit to the hegemonies. Demands, Kira, his voice held a mixture of joy, pain, and guilt that she felt echo through her empathic senses. I didn't know you were. How did you? I've been searching for you, she said, struggling to maintain her composure as emotions threatened to overwhelm her. When you disappeared, when the hegemony declared you dead, I knew you'd survived. I could still feel traces of our old bond in my dreams. Dr. Thorne stepped forward diplomatically. Perhaps introductions are in order. I'm Dr. Iris Thorne, Frontier Assembly's Xenobiological Ethics Committee. This is Kira Salas, our specialist in interspecies psychology and communication. The human woman Nora rose from her position. Beside Zeth and Kira felt another shock of recognition. Not personal this time, but professional. The patterns of energy surrounding the xenobotanist were unlike anything in the literature, suggesting exposure to alien influences that had fundamentally altered her neural architecture. Dr. Blackwood, Kira said formally, extending her hand. I've read your preliminary reports. The implications of your discovery are significant. When their hands touched, Kira's empathic abilities suddenly exploded into overdrive. She found herself pulled into a three-way consciousness that encompassed not just Nora and Zeth, but something vast and alien that pulsed with ancient intelligence. The lumina the sentient plant life Nora had discovered were still connected to both humans, their influence reaching across light years through quantum entanglement effects that shouldn't have been possible. But it was the third presence that truly stunned her. Juno Castellan, the smuggler, was partially integrated into the bond structure despite having no Kelhari genetics. Her exposure to the Lumina's energy fields during their escape from the Sci-Fi had somehow activated dormant neural pathways, making her the first fully human participant in a Kelhari-style life bond. This is impossible, Kira breathed, releasing Nora's hand and staggering backward. The bond patterns, the quantum entanglement, the multi-species neural integration, none of this should be scientifically feasible. Yet here we are, Juno said dryly, though Kira could sense the profound confusion and longing underneath her casual manner. Trust me, I'm not exactly comfortable with having alien thoughts rattling around in my head either. Zeth stepped forward, his posture careful and controlled. Kira, I can explain, can you? The words came out sharper than Kira intended. 3 years of grief and abandonment finally finding their voice. Can you explain why you left without a word? Why you let me believe you might be dead? Why I find you bonded to not one but two other people when you swore our connection was sacred? The silence that followed was thick with emotional tension. Through her empathic senses, Kira felt Nora's protective anger, Juno's uncomfortable guilt, and underneath it all, Zeth's profound regret and self-loathing. Because I was a coward, he said finally, because I knew that if I stayed, if I tried to fight the hegemony's demands, they would have used you against me. They would have forced me to choose between my principles and your life. So you chose. For both of us, Kira replied, the hurt of 3 years condensed into those few words. Dr. Thorne cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps we could focus on the immediate situation. The evidence you've gathered about Helix Corporation's activities can wait, Kira said firmly. She looked directly at Zeth, her violet eyes blazing with barely controlled emotion. I need to understand what's happened to you. All of you. The bond patterns I'm sensing shouldn't exist. Without waiting for permission, she reached out with her telepathic abilities, seeking to understand the impossible connection she was witnessing. What she found defied every assumption she'd made about the nature of consciousness itself. The bond between Zeth and Nora was indeed impossible by traditional Kelhari standards. Their species were too different, their neural architectures too incompatible. But the Lumina had served as a bridging consciousness, their quantum entangled intelligence creating a three-way symbiosis that allowed the interspecies connection to stabilize. Juno's integration was even more remarkable. Her exposure to the Lumina's energy fields had awakened latent psionic potential that existed in a small percentage of humans. But her bond to Zeth and Nora was mediated through technology, rather than biology. The wandering star's enhanced sensors and communication arrays had been subtly modified by Lumina influence, creating a technological bridge that allowed her human consciousness to interface with Kelhari life energy patterns. You're all connected to them, Kira whispered in awe. The Lumina aren't just sentient plants, they're a distributed intelligence that exists partially in normal space and partially in quantum dimensions. They've been watching our species for centuries, waiting for the right moment to make contact. They chose us, Nora said softly, all of us. Zeth because his healing abilities made him sensitive to their consciousness. Me because my botanical research brought me into close contact with them. Juno because her ship's sensors were advanced enough to detect their quantum signatures, and you, Zeph added, looking directly at Kira, because your empathic abilities would let you understand what we've become. Kira felt the truth of his words resonate through her consciousness. Her telepathic abilities were reacting to the quantum patterns surrounding the three bonded individuals, and she could sense the vast intelligence of the Lumina reaching across space. To touch her mind, "Welcome, Bridge Builder," came a voice that wasn't quite a voice, speaking in harmonies that bypassed her ears and spoke directly to her consciousness. "We have waited long for one who could help others understand. They're here," Kira gasped, her empathic senses suddenly overwhelmed by contact with an intelligence vast and ancient beyond human comprehension. "They're speaking to me." The laboratory filled with soft, pulsing light as the Lumina's influence manifested through the Qua. The Galactic Council chambers on New Geneva had never witnessed anything like the testimony unfolding before them. Representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as holographic displays showed the evidence that would reshape the political landscape of known space forever. Kira stood at the central podium, her mixed heritage making her the perfect spokesperson for what they were proposing. Behind her, Nora, Zeph, and Juno sat in a formation that seemed casual but was actually carefully calculated close enough to maintain their quantum-entangled bond connection, positioned to present a united front to the council members, whose decisions would determine the fate of interspecies relations for generations. "The evidence speaks for itself," Kira said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "Helix Corporation and the Kelhari hegemony have been deliberately suppressing peaceful contact between our species for decades. The destruction of Research Station KR-7, the attempted assassination of Dr. Blackwood and her companions, the illegal experimentation on sentient life forms, all documented, all verified by independent sources." Council Speaker Martok, an elderly Vrishan whose crystalline features reflected the chamber's lights in rainbow patterns, leaned forward in his floating chair. "The accusations you present are serious, Specialist Solace, but the implications of your personal demonstration are equally troubling to many of our members." He gestured toward the four humans and Kelhari seated behind Kira. "You claim that these individuals represent a new form of consciousness, one that transcends species barriers. Some of our members fear this could be a form of mental contamination, a threat to the cognitive independence of our respective peoples." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, fear, excitement, uncertainty blending into a complex harmony of alien voices. Kira could feel the emotional undercurrents through her empathic abilities, but more importantly, she could sense the Lumina's presence reaching across space to touch the minds of every being in the room. "Speaker Martok," she replied formally, "what we're offering isn't contamination, it's evolution. The Lumina have shown us that consciousness itself can transcend the boundaries. We've assumed we're absolute, not replacement of individual identity, but expansion of what it means to be sentient." To demonstrate her point, Kira extended her hand toward Nora, who rose and joined her at the podium. The moment their fingers touched, the chamber's holographic displays came alive with patterns of light that matched the quantum signatures they'd recorded on Vesha-7. "Dr. Blackwood," Kira said, her voice now carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before, "would you share your perspective on consciousness expansion?" Nora's eyes held flecks of blue and violet that shifted with the light patterns surrounding them. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of direct experience rather than academic theory. 3 months ago, I was a xenobotanist studying plant specimens," she said. "Today, I can feel the emotional states of every sentient being in this chamber, not through technology, not through invasive procedures, but through a natural expansion of consciousness that the Lumina have been offering our species for centuries." She gestured towards Zeph, who rose and moved to stand beside them. "The Kelhari have always known that consciousness could be shared through life bonding. What the Lumina taught us is that this ability isn't limited to a single species. With the right guidance, any sentient being can join the network of expanded awareness." Zeph's presence added another layer to the demonstration, his healing abilities, enhanced by the bond network, allowed him to project feelings of peace and well-being throughout the chamber. Several of the more aggressive species representatives visibly relaxed, their postures shifting from defensive to curious. "The applications are limitless," Zeth said, his voice carrying the accumulated wisdom of Kelhari healing traditions. Medical treatment that addresses not just physical symptoms, but emotional and spiritual trauma, communication that transcends language barriers, conflict resolution based on genuine empathy rather than political necessity. Finally, Juno joined them at the podium, completing the quartet that had become something more than the sum of its parts. Her presence brought a different quality to the demonstration, the grounded pragmatism of someone who'd spent years navigating the dangerous spaces between corporate territories. "I'm not a scientist or a healer," she said simply. "I'm a smuggler who got caught up in something bigger than any profit margin. But what I've learned is that the bonds we're talking about don't make you less human. They make you more than you ever thought possible." As all four stood together, their bond network fully activated, the chamber filled with a palpable sense of connection. Representatives who had spent decades suspicious of each other's motives suddenly found themselves experiencing genuine understanding of different perspectives. But it was the arrival of an unexpected guest that truly shifted the balance of the hearing. The chamber's main doors opened to admit a figure that caused an immediate stir. Among the Kelhari delegation, Theron Voss, former High Chancellor of the Kelhari hegemony, had been presumed dead for over a year after disappearing during a mysterious transport accident. "Honorable Council," Theron said, his voice carrying the authority of decades in galactic politics, "I request permission to address this assembly as a witness to the charges being presented." Speaker Martok's crystalline features shifted. Through several color phases, the Vrishan equivalent of extreme surprise. "High Chancellor Voss, your presence here is unexpected. We were told you had died in service to your people." "A convenient fiction," Theron replied, approaching the central podium with the measured pace of someone accustomed to command. "I have spent the last year investigating the alliance between my own government's military faction and human corporate interests. What I discovered led me to fake my own death rather than become complicit in interspecies genocide." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs and demands for clarification. Theron waited for the noise to subside before continuing. "The Hegemony and Helix Corporation have been planning what they call Project Isolation, a systematic campaign to eliminate any possibility of peaceful cooperation between our species. The bonds demonstrated here today represent their greatest fear, proof that their artificial barriers between peoples are not only unnecessary, but actively harmful." He activated a personal data projector, filling the chamber with classified documents and communication records. Military buildup disguised as defensive measures, assassination lists targeting scientists and diplomats who advocate for cooperation, plans to stage false flag attacks that would justify open warfare between the major species alliances. Kira felt the emotional temperature of the chamber shift dramatically. As the full scope of the conspiracy became clear, fear and anger mixed with determination and hope in a complex symphony that the bond network allowed her to experience directly. "The evidence is overwhelming," Speaker Martok said, after reviewing the data Theron had provided. "But the question remains, what do we do with this information? How do we prevent the war they've been planning, while also addressing the concerns about consciousness expansion?" It was Nora who stepped forward with the answer they'd been developing. "During their weeks in hiding, we proposed the establishment of New Eden Colony," she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was suggesting. "A joint settlement where humans, Kelhari, and other species can explore consciousness expansion in a controlled environment. Not mandatory, not imposed on anyone, but available to those who choose to participate," Zeth added. "The Lumina have agreed to serve as guides and moderators for the process. Their quantum-distributed consciousness allows them to facilitate bonds safely while preventing the kind of forced integration that the hegemony wanted to weaponize." Juno's contribution was characteristically practical. "We already have the infrastructure. The abandoned mining colonies in the Kepler system could be converted to support mixed-species populations, far enough from major trade routes to avoid corporate interference, but close enough to serve as a demonstration of what's possible. Kira felt the tide of opinion in the chamber shifting. As council members began to see possibilities rather than just threats, the emotional resonance of hope was beginning to outweigh fear and suspicion. But it was the arrival of another unexpected guest that sealed their victory. A section of the chamber floor began to glow with the familiar patterns of luminous communication. The assembled representatives watched in awe as a holographic projection materialized, not of any recognizable life form, but of patterns of light and energy that somehow conveyed intelligence and benevolence. "Greetings, children of the galaxy," came a voice that spoke directly to every mind in the chamber. "We are the Lumina, and we have waited long for this moment of understanding." The projection shifted and flowed, creating patterns that conveyed meaning beyond the limitations of any single language. "We offer not conquest but cooperation, not absorption but expansion. Each species brings unique gifts to the greater symphony of consciousness. Together, you can achieve what none could accomplish alone." Speaker Martok was the first to find his voice. "What do you ask of us in return? Only what you have already chosen to give," the Lumina replied. "The courage to trust,